This is a microfocus tutorial video. This demonstration will be a visual explanation broken down in sections of the ZCM appliance migration process, explaining the process of migrating a ZCM 11 SP3 appliance to ZCM 11 SP4. This information can also be found in the documentation on the support site. Current configuration: ZENworks Configuration Management version 11 Service Pack 3 Appliance. Upgraded to version 11.3.2 FRU1. Standard appliance with a partition dev/SDA. Additional larger mounted virtual disk for ZENworks content, partition dev/SDB. An internal Sybase database and internal certificates. The processes we will step through are: verify ZENworks 11 SP3 Appliance system integrity with ZENworks Diagnostics Center. Prepare a new virtual disk for the migration called vastorage. Copy the ZENworks 11 SP3 data using the migration utility to the virtual disk called vastorage. Attach the vastorage disk to the 11 SP4 appliance. Deploy and configure ZENworks 11 SP4 appliance. Migrate the ZENworks 11 SP3 data to the 11 SP4 appliance. Mount any additional ZENworks 11 SP3 repository disks to the ZENworks 11 SP4 appliance. Configure ZENworks 11 SP4 appliance using the ZENworks Appliance console, and then post-migration tasks. Let's take a walkthrough on our appliance that we'll be migrating. It's an 11 SP3. You'll see it's using an extended partition, SDB1 for VAROP Novell ZENworks for the ZENworks system. If we go over to the appliance ZCC, you'll see we have some bundles and some policies. Workstation and the server. Server is currently at FRU1 of 11.3.2. See that we're currently subscribed to our NCC as well as our system updates is active. So we have a fully functional ZENworks server deploying bundles to this particular device here. It is attached to the Digital Airlines zone. Starting off on our 11.3.2 virtual appliance for ZENworks, we will check the appliance system integrity with the ZENworks Diagnostics Center. I've downloaded the ZENworks Diagnostics Center for 11.3.2, and we'll run the verify for the database itself and the system files. This will take a moment to run, but it's checking all integrity for the files and the database. Now that that's complete, we'll do the same thing on the audit database that was introduced in 11.3. Those reports are in the reports folder of ZDC Home as specified here. There's the two of them. We'll go out and check to see how the database report and system files reports look. So far, all tables are found in the database and integrity seems to be intact with the ZENworks. If we go over to the audit database, we can also see that those are verified. That concludes our verification using the ZENworks Diagnostics Center for 11.3.2. Now one of our first steps we want to do is add a vastorage disk. So we'll go to the VM, add hard disk, create a new. We're going to make this 100 gig, which we've calculated. We're going to call this ZENworks VA Storage. You'll notice our other disk is named ZENworks Disk. That's our extended disk. And then we have our primary disk for the OS. Now, in order for the OS to see this newly created disk, we have to reboot. So we'll go ahead and do that now. VA storage is a part of the migration process and mounted as the second disk in the ZCM 11 SP4 appliance. This volume, VA storage, will be used in future migrations as well. So if we look at our configuration, you'll see just SDA1 and SDB1. We've downloaded the appliance migration utility. You can see the ISO is located here. Let's make a directory called application mu. We'll go ahead and mount the application migration utility 11.4.iso to the /application mu directory. And then we'll go ahead and run the utility. We have run our ZDC. We'll say yes. We do want to continue because all other primary servers have their ZENworks services turned off. We will pick the 100 gigabyte drive we just created, which in this case is 2. And this will take a few minutes. You'll notice that it mounted SDC1 as VA storage automatically in the script. This is currently collecting all the config files and network settings that your 11 SP3 has and storing it on the VA storage. The ZENworks adaptive agent is sensing that the ZENworks service does not appear to be running. This is a normal prompt. You can OK on this. The script has turned off those services. The copy files is complete. VA storage, you'll notice, if we run a check again, has been dismounted. VA storage is now ready to be disconnected from the 11 SP3 appliance. So we will go ahead and power down this particular appliance. As you remember, we had a primary disk, a ZENworks disk, and a VA storage disk. We'll go ahead and detach both the ZENworks disk and the VA storage disk from the 11 SP3. We then have an 11 SP4 which we're going to attach those devices to. This VM has yet to be powered on. We're going to add the VA storage first. Then we will add the ZENworks disk. Now those disks reside in the 11 SP4. We can now power on the 11 SP4 guest. Be advised that the volumes attached to ZCM11 SP3 are typically in the ZCM11 SP3 directory structure. When detaching them and adding them to the ZCM11 SP4 appliance, the volumes themselves remain in the original directory structure. It is not advisable to delete the 11 SP3 directory structure. Now the appliance will start initializing. We'll mount the VA storage and look for configuration settings. Put in your root password for the 11 SP4 appliance. Notice the IP settings. This may take a little while it does its background processing. The Appliance Configuration Utility automatically populates the identity and network details for the ZENworks 11 SP4 appliance from the ZENworks 11 SP3 data and continues booting the appliance. When the process is complete, the appliance console URL will appear. We can log in to this appliance. Stop all the Novell ZENworks services except for the database, since the database is internal. If it's an external database, please leave those running. Now we can select stop. It is important to have the database functioning when you go through the upgrade process. Notice SDB1 is there as VA storage automatically. The utility script takes care of that. Now we need to mount the second disk from our 11 SP3 that has our ZENworks components on it. The original ZCM11 SP4 appliance is self-contained and has a var op Novell ZENworks directory. If your original ZCM11 SP3 appliance had an additional partition like in our example, when migrating on the ZCM11 SP4, you'll need to remove the ZENworks directory and connect the ZCM11 SP3 external partition to this location on the 11 SP4 appliance as shown here. You see now that everything is mounted. We now need to make sure that the FS tab is updated so that it'll automatically mount on boot. You want to make sure that the Novell services are now started with all the disks mounted properly and all the permissions set. Now we want to give the appropriate permissions for the ZENworks directory. And run the permission scripts. Make note of the URL here and let's go to a workstation with a browser and log into the console of the appliance itself. Once logged in on the 11 SP4 appliance under port 9443, we get this prompt immediately. Complete appliance migration. These are some tasks they're double checking to make sure before we actually apply and migrate the data. Once you have completed these tasks and any external drives have been mounted, you can check the I have verified all necessary steps have been completed and select Next. Login as a zone administrator that we created on the initial zone, in this case Digital Airlines. Once logged into the zone, it will start the migration process using all the VA storage and configuration settings that we just mounted. ZENworks is now upgraded. After the migration, you can select View Upgrade Log to see additional information about the upgrade process. This shows a summary of the migration. And it shows everything that was completed. Notice you have the 3 partitions down here, SDA1, B1, and C1. You can see other basic configurations in these tabs as well. Other areas of the appliance console you might find valuable. If you need to get to certain system services, you can actually start SSH so that you can get into it externally. Once running, you can then open up a terminal. You can also find your logs here. You can open up the ZCC from here. You can configure your log configurations for different debug levels. Restart services, reboot and shut down for the appliance. Those are some of the areas that you might find valuable in this console. There are a few post-migration tasks you want to check. The NTP related configuration will not be migrated, hence you need to manually configure the NTP settings in the ZENworks 11 SP4 appliance again. You must be logged into the appliance console as root to configure the NTP settings. If the NTP settings are not configured, a time sync warning message is displayed during the ZENworks console ZCC login. Another post-migration task would be to run the ZDC, ZENworks Diagnostics Center, to verify the migrated 11 SP4 appliance system. Make sure you download the 11 SP4 ZDC. A third post-migration task would be to ensure that all ZENworks services are running. So we can see that your zone is being upgraded to 11 SP4. So these are in the process of being upgraded, so if you had multiple servers, you do definitely want to take note. If we look at our configuration, we can then see that Novell Customer Center, it is still registered. It's migrated all those settings over, as well as the system updates. Previous bundles, policies, devices are still intact from when we started. Notice the ZENworks primary server, the 11 SP4 appliance, is now at 11.4. We should be ready now to do the same migration process for any other 11 SP3 appliance in the zone. Once all the primaries are updated to 11 SP4 and the system shows as successful, ensure the system update is replicated to 100%. Then apply the 11 SP4 system update to the satellite servers first. Once the satellites are completed successfully, you can then deploy the ZCM 11 SP4 system update to manage devices in the zone. These next few slides are some of the things to keep in mind when migrating an appliance from 11 SP3 to 11 SP4. Each appliance for the 11 SP4 will have a VA storage partition disk. Be sure to check the documentation on guidelines for calculating the VA storage size. In our example, we've calculated 100 gigabytes for the size of the VA storage partition disk for network settings, configuration data, and the internal Sybase database. If you are using the internal embedded Sybase database for your zone, start the ZCM migration on the primary server holding this internal database. Follow the same migration steps if you have an additional 11 SP3 appliance in the zone to be migrated. For additional primary servers, make sure the ZCM 11 SP4 primaries and database are running when migrating or upgrading any additional primary servers. If your primary server is not an appliance, use a documented ZCM 11 SP4 upgrade process. This concludes this ZENworks tutorial video showing how to migrate the first ZCM 11 SP3 primary server appliance to ZCM 11 SP4.